Good evening, Brennan, and welcome to the Lodge Hope of Karachi number 337 and our lockdown lecture series, Zoom meeting number 60. It's a great pleasure to have you all here, Brennan, on such a wet and windy and snowy day outside. Sod's law, Brennan, the pub's open again and we get the worst of the weather of winter. But hopefully the sun comes out and brightens up to allow everyone to enjoy the beer gardens and support local businesses over the coming weeks and months ahead. As ever, Bern, can I remind you of the Grand Lodge of Scotland rules on Zoom meetings? Please keep your video on and a recognisable name in the video screen. If your bandwidth does become a challenge, Bern, just drop me a little message in the chat box that you're putting your camera off. That'd be much appreciated. As ever, can I ask you to sign the virtual tile on our Zoom, on our Facebook pages, Bern, so we've got a record for posterity going forward. Thank you so much. Bern, it's a great pleasure to welcome this evening's guest speaker. I'd scribbled some notes down about him, and I thought, what can I say about this real Kent brother? And this afternoon I got an email asking if I needed any more, and I received some more information from him. So I ripped up my crib notes and I thought, well, I better be nice to the Grand Secretary General and the past Substitute Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Scotland. But I'll give you a little bit background of Brother Alexander Galbraith Byrne. He was initiated in 1966, so there's no truth that the most important thing that happened that year was England winning the World Cup at all. And I'm sure that as a young junior steward in the late 60s, early 70s, he never thought that 45, 50 years later, he would have travelled the world on Masonic business in the way that he's done. He's a past Provincial Grand Master of Renfrewshire West. He's a past Master of his Mother Lodge, Greenock St John, serving as Right Worshipful Master when I was initiated into the craft in 1989. He's known to many of us through a variety of other orders, in particular the Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite, where he serves the craft as Grand Secretary General and looking after all those who are in that order. But when I was reading through his CV, Bern, there's many other notable Masonic honours that he has achieved over a 55-year career in Freemasonry. He's also a past Provincial Grand Master of the Provincial Grand Lodge of Glasgow in the West of Scotland, of the Royal Order of Scotland. And no doubt what the West of Scotland means may come out in his presentation this evening. Bern, it's a great delight to welcome along Brother Alec Galbraith to give us an insight into his mother province and Freemasonry in Inverclyde since 1738. Brother Alexander Galbraith, the virtual floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Master, Brother Mickey. It's a great delight to be present this evening. Delighted to see so many brethren present. It's a long time since I set foot in Lodge Hope of Karachi, as I mentioned earlier. Right Worshipful Master, I had been through there on many occasions with my late father's cousin, the late Dickie Bird. And the last time I think I was in Hope of Karachi was the evening when the late Brother Jack Turpey delivered his talk on the journey between two letters, and that was a good number of years ago. It's a great delight to be here this evening, brethren, and I hope that you will be able to gain some information about the small province of Renfrewshire West. You have screen share, Right Worshipful Master?
You should be able to screen share now, Alec.
Okay. Can you see that up there?
It's not come up yet.
You have gotten?
Not yet, Alec. I'll give you a shout when it comes through. You are able to screen share. That's it coming on now, Alec. That's at your main screen, and that's you at your first slide.
Aye. Well, good evening again, brethren. My talk this evening is on the development of Freemasonry in Inverclyde since 1728. Now, brethren, it's tempting to think of the Provincial Grand Lodge of Renfrewshire West, with its 9 lodges and more or less fixed local authority boundary, as though it or something like it had been there from time immemorial. But the carving up of Scotland into clearly defined provinces came about very slowly and hesitantly, with many setbacks and false turnings. We can see with hindsight that the emergence of centralised modern provinces from a welter of disparate power sources was the way in which Freemasonry in Scotland would develop. Now, this is neither the time nor the place to discuss the history of Freemasonry in Scotland. I would simply recommend for our younger and newer brethren to read The First Freemasons by David Stevenson, as this will give a greater insight into the origins of Scottish Freemasonry. It will also dispel the Anglo-centric assumptions that Freemasonry began in England. It most certainly did not. Freemasonry began in Scotland, and the oldest minute in the world is that of Lodge Aitchison's Haven, dated 1598. The Lodge of Edinburgh Mary's Chapel, now number 1 on the roll of the Grand Lodge of Scotland, has been in existence since July 1599, and they have all their written records from that date. And what I would like to do this evening, brethren, is take a walk through our small province and perhaps spread a little enlightenment of the province and the lodges that are or have been in existence in what is now identified as the local authority area of Inverclyde since at least 1728. Renfrewshire, anciently called Strathgalbraith, is described in the statistical account of Scotland in 1801 as a maritime county on the west coast of Scotland. Although only 27th among Scottish counties in regards area, its industrial importance is so great that it ranks 6th in the order of valuation and 5th in the order of population. Renfrewshire's total population is 78,056, and it covers an area of 253 square miles. On local government reorganisation in 1996, the county of Renfrewshire was subdivided into Renfrewshire, East Renfrewshire and Inverclyde, with a total population of 344,000, quite an increase from 1801, brethren. Our wee province in Renfrewshire West has an area of only 62 square miles and covers the whole of Inverclyde, which currently has a population of 78,000. Leaving the province of Renfrewshire East with an area of 191 square miles and have a population of about 263,000, which is quite an imbalance. And one can only wonder what the criteria and thinking was in 1826, when the original province was divided into Renfrewshire East and Renfrewshire West. As many of you will be aware, brethren, the reigning master of Lodge Greenock Winning number 12, Brother Alexander Drummond, was appointed as the first ever Provincial Grand Master by the Grand Lodge of Scotland on the 7th of February 1739 to superintend the West Country Lodges. These included the shires of Renfrew, Argyll, Stirling, Dumbarton, Inverness and Clydesdale. At the time the new provinces were formed, Renfrewshire East had 16 lodges and Renfrewshire West 8 lodges. Although, to add to the confusion, Lodge Dumbarton Winning number 18 and Leaving St John number 170 were for some reason retained in Renfrewshire West until 1837. There was also an attempt by Grand Lodge to divide the province of Ayrshire and hive off Lodge Beath St John's number 157 and Larg St John's number 173 into the province of Renfrewshire West. This suggestion met with some opposition, and the idea was subsequently dropped. Since then, many changes have taken place, with many lodges going into darkness and some new lodges being consecrated. And so today, brethren, we now only have 9 lodges in our wee province of Renfrewshire West, 1 up from 1826, and 37 lodges in Renfrewshire East, which is 21 up from 1826. Now, the first lodge in Greenock was Lodge Greenock, Co-winning, that is now known as Greenock Co-winning number 12. It was a self-constituted lodge on the 27th of December 1728. It joined Grand Lodge at its foundation on the 30th of November 1736. And the Charter of Confirmation was issued on the 12th of October 1737. It was allocated the number 15 in 1737, and again in 1809. It was issued number 12 in 1816, number 11 in 1822, and finally number 12 again in 1826. There are references to it having been allocated number 14 at one time, but the Grand Lodge records don't support this, brethren, although there are many references to Lodge Greenock Co-winning number 14 in the minutes of Lodge Greenock Lodge Greenock St John's number 175. But it's obvious that Freemasonry must have existed in Greenock for some time prior to 1728, as it's recorded that there were 14 founder members of Lodge Greenock Co-winning. There were 7 Master Masons, 3 Fellow Crafts, and 4 entered apprentices. Unfortunately, brethren, the lodge minutes do not indicate to which lodges these brethren belonged. But 7 were designated as Master Masons. And of course, it's of interest to note that the first ever reference to the degree of Master Mason anywhere in the world is recorded in the minutes of Lodge Dunbritton, which is now known as Lodge Dumbarton number 18, on the 29th of January 1726. Prior to this date, of course, Freemasonry was a 2-degree system, that of entered apprentice and fellow craft. It's also of interest to note that the first ever lodge record in the world, which uses the words passing and raising in our modern sense, is contained in that first minute of Lodge Greenock Co-winning number 12. Immediately after the election of the Master and appointment of office bearers at its first meeting on the 27th of December 1728, the Lodge made a rule as to the fees. And I quote, brethren, that each who shall be received members of this Lodge shall pay into the box when entered as apprentices £1 10 shillings Scots, 12 shillings when passed fellow craft, and 20 shillings Scots when raised Master Mason, beside paying the expenses of the night's entertainment. So the Lodge not only provided the first ever Provincial Grand Master, but it also was the first Lodge to use the terms passing and raising. In 1766, the Right Worshipful Master and the wardens of the Lodge, on hearing that Lord Cathcart had fewed ground to the Greenock Town Council to build the first townhouse, donated £40 towards the building of that townhouse. And Lord Cathcart heard of the massive donation from the Freemasons. He wrote into the few that for all time coming, the Freemasons of Lodge Greenock Co-winning would be able to meet in the new town hall free of charge. And that, brethren, still continues to this day. Indeed, right up until the 1960s, the council officer of the old Greenock Corporation had to be a Freemason, as it was his duty to act as tiler for the lodge and also to set up the lodge for its meetings. And of course, the following morning, the town hall cleaners cleared away all the cups and saucers and did all the washing up. That still exists to this day, brethren, at number 12, meet in the Greenock Town Hall, free of charge. Lodge Drummond Co-winning Lodge Drummond number 40 was chartered by the Grand Lodge of Scotland and met in Edinburgh. It was chartered on the 7th of February 1739. It was erased from the roll of Grand Lodge in 1816. This lodge was formed for the benefit of the many brethren from Edinburgh who were members of Greenock Coinning number 12. Lodge Cumberland Coinning number 217. It was chartered by Mother Coinning on the 4th of February 1746. The lodge was never allocated a number by Coinning. The brethren, towards the end of the 1700s, there became the law, the Secret Societies Act of 1799. It was going to outlaw what they called many secret societies, and that was including the Freemasons. However, a lot of pressure was put on, and it was agreed that the Freemasons would be exempt from the Secret Societies Act. However, Lodge Cumberland Coinning, who were a bit fearful of the new legislation, decided to withdraw from Mother Coinning and apply to Grand Lodge for a charter. The sponsored lodges being Greenock Coinning number 12 and Lodge Greenock St John's number 175. So it was eventually approved, and the Lodge Cumberland Coinning joined the Grand Lodge of Scotland on the 2nd of February 1807. It was allocated number 277, and then 212 in 1816, 216 in 1822, and finally 217 in 1826. Now this may come as a bit of a surprise to some brethren, but the lodge building in King Street in Port Glasgow is acknowledged to be the oldest purpose-built Masonic lodge anywhere in the world, being built in 1757. And it's still being used for its original purpose. Unfortunately, during the last couple of years, the brethren have had to meet in the neighbouring temple of Lodge Doric Coinning number 68 due to structural problems. But it's now been confirmed by the local authority that funding has been put in place for £1.5 million to completely refurbish and repair Lodge Cumberland Coinning 217. So hopefully it will not be too long, brethren, before we can meet again in that lovely temple. They have all the original written orders for the building and the written receipts for the building, brethren. A little known fact, but I think a hugely important fact, is that John Wesley, the father of Methodism, preached in the lodge building. From his diaries, it's recorded that on April the 22nd, 1772, he met in the lodge. And I quote from his diaries, brethren. About 8, I preached once more in the Masons' Lodge at Port Glasgow. The house was crowded greatly, and I suppose all of the gentry of the town were part of the congregation. Resolving not to shoot over their heads, as I had done the day before, I spoke strongly of death and judgment, heaven and hell. This they seemed to comprehend, and there was no more laughing among them or talking with each other, but all were quietly and deeply attentive. Lodge Union from Drummond Coinning from Greenock number 59. This was chartered by the Grand Lodge of Scotland at Aleppo in Turkey on the 30th of November 1747. This was the first Scottish lodge chartered outside Scotland. The date of dormancy is unknown. The minute book of Lodge Canongate Coinning number 2 states that the charter for this lodge was signed in St John's Chapel on the 8th of April 1752. The lodge was founded by Brother Alexander Drummond, member of Lodge Greenock Coinning number 12 and the first Provincial Grand Master in Scotland, who at that time was the British consul in Aleppo. Brother Alexander Drummond was therefore not only the first Provincial Grand Master, but was also the first District Grand Master. Lodge Doric Coinning number 68. It was chartered by Mother Coinning on the 24th of January 1759 and was allocated the number 63 by Mother Cowinning. He joined the Grand Lodge of Scotland in 1808. Until 1816 it was known only as Lodge Doric. Grand Lodge originally allocated the number 300, again in 1809. Then it was 67 in 1816, 63 in 1822, and finally 68 in 1826. But brethren, if Grand Lodge had not allocated another number in 1826, this would have been the only lodge to bear the same number from both Mother Cowinning and the Grand Lodge of Scotland, that number being 63. The lodge met in various places in Port Glasgow, particularly the Shipwright Society Hall in Church Street. The foundation stone of the current lodge, as you see here in the slide, brethren, was laid with full Masonic honours on the 15th of June 1901, the Right Worshipful Master, Brother Councillor Brown. Lodge Greenock, Mount Stuart Cowinning, number 113. This was chartered by Mother Cowinning on St. Thomas the Apostle's feast day on the 21st of December 1768. It was allocated number 70 by that lodge in January 1791. The lodge joined the Grand Lodge of Scotland in 1808 and was allocated number 302. Again in 1809, number 111 in 1816, again in 1822, and finally 113 in 1826. The lodge never used the number 113 and used number 111 until its dormancy. It was finally declared dormant by the Grand Lodge of Scotland in 1861. In fact, brethren, the lodge ceased to operate as a Masonic lodge around 1826. And in 1831, it was legally registered as a friendly society known as the Friendly Society of the Lodge Greenock Mount Stuart Cowinning, number 111. The Friendly Society was dissolved in 1856. And what you see here in the slide, brethren, is the Lodge Temple. This was purpose-built in 1788. And of course, they also owned the shops underneath the lodge. This was built in Charles Street at the corner of Hamilton Street and was later to become known to the generations as the Masons' School and then Crawford's Tea Room. It was put up for public sale on the 26th of March 1857. Unfortunately, brethren, it was demolished during the redevelopment of Greenock Town Centre in the early 1970s. Lodge Greenock St John's number 175, my mother lodge, brethren, chartered by the Grand Lodge of Scotland on the 1st of February 1790. It was allocated number 234 in 1809, 173 in 1816, 176 in 1822, and 175 in 1826. The lodge met in many and various premises: the Gardener's Hall, the Buckhead Hotel, the Assembly Rooms, St John's Hall. And in 1895, the lodge purchased a vacant site on West Stuart Street. And on Saturday, the 6th of February 1897, the foundation stone was laid with full Masonic honours. The consecration of the new temple was carried out on the 23rd of July 1898. And that is the building you see in the slide, brethren, where 175 still meets to this day. Lodge St Andrew Crawfordsdyke, number 212. This was chartered by the Grand Lodge of Scotland on the 23rd of August 1804. But brethren, the lodge seems to have been originally issued as a temporary measure with the Charter of Lodge Union number 121, which was an ambulatory or travelling lodge attached to the 94th Regiment of Foot, the Connaught Rangers, erected in Holland and chartered by the Grand Lodge of Scotland on the 21st of November 1764. This lodge, which was finally erased from the roll of Grand Lodge in 1809, appears to have surrendered its charter a few years earlier. Lodge St Andrew was then allocated number 282 in 1809, 207 in 1816, 211 in 1822, and finally 212 in 1826. The lodge became dormant in 1843. The lodge building was on a piece of ground known as Mr. Hunter's land, which was situated approximately at the east side of a car park, which currently belongs to the EE Mobile Phone Call Centre and the Holiday Inn Express at Cartsburn. This is a Holiday Inn Express, brethren, at Cartsburn and Greenup. And that's where Lodge St Andrews Crawfordsdyke Hall was back in the 1800s. Lodge Firth of Clyde Gourock number 626, consecrated and erected in the Gamble Institute in Shore Street in Gourock. Its charter was dated the 6th of May 1878. Meetings were held in various places, brethren, until the decision was taken to build a new temple in John Street. The foundation stone was laid with full Masonic honours on the 1st of February 1896 by the Master, Brother Captain Robert Duncan. This first meeting held in new premises on the 1st of September 1896. Sadly, brethren, the lodge room was badly damaged by fire in 2008, and I'm happy to report the lodge has since been completely rebuilt. Lodge Sir Michael number 989, chartered by the Grand Lodge of Scotland on the 4th of May 1905. It meets in the village of Kilmacombe, brethren. The lodge used to hold their meetings in the old school hall, and it met there until 1963. 1960, the brethren of the lodge purchased the church hall of the original St Columba's Church in Glebe Road in Kilmacombe, and work continued to upgrade the building. And on Saturday, the 14th of December 1963, the new temple was dedicated and consecrated. During the last few years, brethren, the premises were extended and the installation of a new upper floor containing a new temple. The new temple was dedicated on Saturday, the 14th of March 2020, the last working meeting in the province prior to the pandemic, brethren. Lodge Crawfordsburn 1121. It was chartered on the 7th of August 1913. The lodge met in the halls of Crawfordsburn Church in McDougall Street in Greenup. A plot of land directly across from Crawfordsburn Church became available, and the lodge purchased the ground, and work commenced in August 1931. On the 3rd of September 1932, the memorial stone was laid and the new temple was consecrated. Unfortunately, brethren, the lodge had been built in a heavily industrial area, and with the gradual depopulation and decline of the heavy marine engineering and shipbuilding industry in the 1970s and the early 80s, the lodge was left in a virtual wasteland. And with the continual increase in local rates and unemployment, the lodge had no alternative but to vacate their building. The lodge relocated to Lodge Greenup St John's number 175, where they remained until October 2015, when I again relocated to the 175 Masonic Social Club in Kelly Street in Greenup, where it continues to meet to this day. Lodge Inverclyde number 1425 was chartered on the 5th of February 1948. It met in the village of Inverclyde. It met originally in the old Free Church of Scotland that stood at the corner of Main Street and Station Road. In 1960, the lodge moved to the old Comrades Hall, but sadly that building was in a dreadful state of repair and not fit for purpose. So in 1971, the lodge relocated to meet the premises of Firth of Clyde Gourock number 626. It then met for a short time in Lodge Greenup St John's 175 before returning again to Firth of Clyde Gourock 626, where it continues to meet to this day. Lodge International number 1508. This lodge was chartered on the 3rd of November 1955. And it was born from an idea of a group of businessmen who met for lunch every Friday in the Montrose Canteen in the Hillington Industrial Estate in Glasgow. Most of them were Freemasons and members of lodges from the 3 home grand lodges, hence the name of the lodge, brother. The lodge was consecrated and erected on the 10th of March 1956. From its inception, it met in the Cargill Hall and Bridge of Weir until 1991, and due to unforeseen circumstances, it relocated to the village hall at Quarriers Village, where it remained for some 16 months before moving to Lodge Sir Michael number 989 in Kilmacombe. Unfortunately, the original members retired and many moved away from the area, and the membership continued to fall until it was agreed to merge with Lodge Sir Michael number 989 on the 1st of February 2007. Sadly, brethren, the lodge had only celebrated its 50th anniversary 11 months earlier on the 18th of March 2006. The latest lodge in the province, brethren, the Anchor Lodge of Research, number 1814, was chartered on the 1st of August 1996. It was consecrated and erected on the 29th of March 1997. The vision of the founding members, brethren, was to teach and uphold the highest ideals of Freemasonry, to help brethren towards a better interpretation of Masonic allegory and symbolism, and to guide them to a more profound knowledge and appreciation of the true meaning and purpose of the craft system. To date, the Lodge has hosted many prominent Scottish Masonic researchers and speakers, including one from Belgium, 2 from London, and the popular Masonic authors Christopher Knight and Dr. Robert Lomas. There have also been a number of lady speakers, including Carrie Gibson from Inverclyde, the first Scottish woman to scale Everest, the eminent Dr. Catherine Smith, and Lady Lucinda Shaw Stewart, a descendant of many prominent past provincial Grand Masters, including Sir Michael Robert Shaw Stewart, the 7th Baronet, who was Grand Master Mason from 1873 to 1882. In 2011, the reigning moderator of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland, the Right Reverend John Christie, also addressed the Lodge. Brethren of the Anchor Lodge are also in demand to deliver research papers in lodges and other Masonic organisations throughout Scotland. Brethren, there have been 1 or 2 other local lodges. The Greenock Melrose Lodge. The lodge, now known as Lodge at Melrose St John number 1-2, is known to exist from at least 1599, and chartered by the Grand Lodge of Scotland on the 5th of February 1891. At Motherco Winning, the Lodge of Melrose granted charters to lodges. Now it's known, brethren, that she chartered 5 lodges. Details of the names and charter dates of 3 of these, including one in Greenock, are unknown, but there are references made to this irregular lodge in the minutes of local lodges in our province. The Greenock Caledonian Railway Lodge. This lodge is referred to in the minutes of local lodges. I think rather than being an established or chartered Greenock Lodge, the minutes refer to the Caledonian Railway Lodge number 354, which was first chartered in Edinburgh on the 8th of February 1849. It became dormant in 1853. It was originally chartered to meet at any place on the Caledonian Railway system. Now, as the Caledonian Railway had workshops in Greenock, it's not unreasonable to assume a lodge under the auspices of that travelling charter would be held at that location. It's interesting to note, brethren, that the Caledonian Railway workshops in Greenock employed some 350 men. The company closed the workshops in 1856 and moved to St Rollox in Glasgow, taking the 350 men with them. The Caledonian Railway Lodge was reponed in 1859 to meet at a fixed location in Glasgow, and it now meets, as far as I remember, brethren, at Lodge Eastmuir out in Shettleston. Now, if I can look at the Provincial Grand Lodge of Renfrewshire West. Soon after the foundation of the Grand Lodge of Scotland on St Andrew's Day, the 30th of November 1736, the rulers of the craft realised that for the better government of the order, the country should be divided into geographical areas or provinces, and that provincial Grand Masters should be appointed. The title of Provincial Grand Master was in all probability derived from the English practice, where it had been introduced some 15 years earlier. The genesis of the first Provincial Grand Lodge and the appointment of the first Provincial Grand Master is contained in a minute of the Grand Lodge of Scotland, dated the 30th of November 1738. Alexander Drummond was born into a branch of the family which was a cadet of the Drummonds of Staub Hall and Cargill, and it was his grandfather who received from Charles I the charter to erect Blair Gowrie into a borough of barony. The Drummond family were important and influential in the affairs of state, in politics, strongly Whig, and in religion, faithful to the established church. The family resided at Newton Castle in Blair Gowrie, and while Alexander's elder brother George was born in the castle in 1687, it's not known where Alexander was born. George Drummond, who was later to become Grand Master Mason 1752 to 1753, would appear to have played an important part in the life of his sibling Alexander. George served 6 terms as Lord Provost of Edinburgh and obtained the important post of Accountant General of Excise of Scotland, and perhaps was instrumental in Alexander's appointment as HM Collector of Customs at Greenock. And as can be seen from the Grand Lodge minute, he was Senior Grand Warden at the time of Alexander's appointment as Provincial Grand Master. Brother Alexander Drummond was initiated in Lodge Greenock Coinning number 15, now correctly number 12, on the 3rd of February 1738. Passed on the 7th of March, raised Master Mason on the 26th of April, and on the 27th of December that same year, 1738, he was elected Master, serving from 1739 and 1740. It's interesting to note, brethren, that on the 20th of January 1739, a meeting of Lodge Greenock Coinning, Brother George Drummond was appointed as Senior Warden Pro Tem. And later in the meeting, he was officially affiliated along with Brother James Colquhoun, the Lord Provost of Edinburgh. It must have been a very interesting meeting, because in the same evening, Lord Cardross, known as Henry Erskine, the 10th Earl of Buchan, was initiated as an entered apprentice. Henry Erskine, brethren, went on to become Grand Master Mason from 1745 to 1746. Since then, Lodge Greenock Coinning number 12 have provided 3 Grand Master Masons: George Drummond, 1752 to 53, Henry Erskine that I just mentioned, and Colonel Sir Michael Shaw Stewart, the 7th Baronet, from 1873 to 1882, who was also Provincial Grand Master. The first minute of Provincial Grand Lodge is contained in the first minute book of Lodge Greenock Coinning number 12, on the 7th of February 1739, when the Earl of Kintore installed Brother Drummond as Provincial Grand Master over the lodges in the Western Country. Drummond's commission was subsequently renewed by the succeeding Grand Master Masons, namely James Douglas, the 14th Earl of Morton, who was also Grand Master Mason of England in 1741 and 1742, Thomas Lyon, the 8th Earl of Strathmore and Kinghorn, who was Grand Master of England 1744 and 45. Alexander Leslie, the 5th Earl of Leven and 4th Earl of Melville. And William Boyd, 4th and last Earl of Kilmarnock, who was later beheaded at the Tower of London for his part in the 1745 rebellion. On receipt of his commission as Provincial Grand Master, Alexander Drummond marked the occasion by presenting a set of handsome jewels attached to proper ribbons to Lord Greenock Coninning in respect of the offices of Master, Deputy Master, Warden, Secretary and Treasurer. He also presented a neck jewel to mark the occasion. This neck jewel that you see before you, brethren, is still worn by the Master to this day. Brother Drummond at once began to discharge the duties of his patent with great assiduity and fidelity. As extracts from the old minute books of Lodge Glasgow Coninning No. 4, Lodge St John's Old Coninning No. 6 at Inverness, and Dumbarton Coninning Lodge No. 20, now No. 18, clearly illustrate. Drummond reported to Grand Lodge that he had visited Lodge St John Coninning Kirkintilloch, now No. 28, and Lodge Kilsyth St John, now No. 39, and applied for charters on their behalf. In 1744, Alexander Drummond was appointed HM Consul at Aleppo in Turkey, and while resident there, was active and zealous in promulgating the tenets of Freemasonry. He formed and constituted the first Scottish Lodge in the Near East. According to the minutes of Grand Lodge, November the 30th, 1747, it was stated by Grand Master Mason, the Right Honourable the Lord Provost of Edinburgh, Brother George Drummond, that his brother Alexander Drummond, late Provincial Grand Master of the West of Scotland, having taken up his residence at Alexandretta in Turkey, had erected several Masons' lodges in that part of the country, and as he was anxious still further to diffuse the principles of the fraternity, he begged that Grand Lodge would grant him a provincial or district Grand Commission. Grand Lodge, having taken this petition into consideration, unanimously granted the requisition. For this, brethren, Alexander Drummond had the dual honour conferred on him of being the first Scottish Provincial Grand Master and the first Scottish District Grand Master appointed by the Grand Lodge of Scotland. The Drummond had only been in residence at Aleppo in Turkey for a year or so when he formed his first lodge, which, as I mentioned earlier, was named Union Lodge from Drummond Coninning from Greenock, number 59. It's also worthy to note, brethren, that while this first lodge chartered the Grand Lodge of Scotland, this area took place in 1745. The earliest English lodge at Smyrna, of which there is any record, is the Homer Lodge number 806, which was warranted in 1816, or some 115 years later. Drummond's title as District Grand Master was somewhat long-winded. He was designated District Grand Master over the countries in Europe and Asia bordering the Mediterranean Sea. On returning from the Levant, he took up residence in Edinburgh and resumed his Masonic activities. He demitted office as Provincial Grand Master of the Western Counties in 1747 and was succeeded by Robert Mollison, HM Collector of Excise at Ayr and a past Master of Mar Coninning number nothing, although he had been initiated into Glasgow Coninning Lodge number 4. As might be expected, brethren, with his brother George serving as Grand Master Mason, as well as being a distinguished civic leader and important government official, it's not surprising to learn that Alexander Drummond became deeply immersed in the Masonic affairs in the capital. On the 24th of June 1760, he was elected Master of Lodge Canongate Winning number 2, and was later that year deputed by the Grand Master Mason to lay the foundation stone of the Greco-Roman St Bernard's Well in the Water of Leith with full Masonic honours. Alexander Drummond was undoubtedly a most conscientious, diligent and active provincial Grand Master, who, without precedents to guide him, set an excellent example for all future incumbents of that high office. He was at all times animated by a deep devotion and love of the craft. He made his mark in his own day and laid well and truly the foundations of that first Provincial Grand Lodge. Between 1745 and 1801, those separate Provincial Grand Lodges were formed in various parts of Scotland. In May 1801, it was an important date for our province, as it was then that Brother William McDowell was appointed as Provincial Grand Master of the newly designated province of Dumbartonshire and Renfrewshire, with a separate Provincial Grand Lodge being formed for Argyllshire. Brother McDowell, like the first Provincial Grand Master, was Master of Lodge Greenock Winning number 12 when he was appointed as Provincial Grand Master. 11 years later saw the start of the family link to the province that continued for more than 150 years. In 1812, Sir Michael Shaw Stewart, the 5th Baronet, was commissioned as Provincial Grand Master of Renfrew and Dumbartonshires. On Sir Michael's death on the 25th of August 1825, he was succeeded by his son Sir Michael, the 6th Baronet, who immediately recommended to Grand Lodge that the province be split in two. And so it was on the 30th of November that the province of Renfrew and Dumbartonshire was divided into the Provincial Grand Lodge of Renfrewshire East and the Provincial Grand Lodge of Renfrewshire West. And Brother Sir John Maxwell of Pollock was appointed as the Provincial Grand Master of the new province of Renfrewshire East. And since then, brethren, there's been a considerable number of Provincial Grand Masters. Brethren, many of you will recall that on Sunday the 7th of September 2014, the Provincial Grand Lodge of Renfrewshire West, as part of their 275th anniversary celebrations to commemorate the appointment of the first Provincial Grand Master, held a divine service in Old West Kirk in Greenock Esplanade, when 200 brethren paraded along the Esplanade to the church. Brethren, this church was specifically chosen because it was built in 1591 by John Shaw, the brother of William Shaw, who wrote the first Shaw Statutes in 1598 and the second Statutes in 1599. The Old West Kirk was authorised by Royal Charter in 1589 and first opened in 1591. It is noted as the first Presbyterian church built in Scotland following the Reformation and the first approved by the Parliament of Scotland. Of course, in later years, the Shaw family married into the Stewart family of Ardgowan in Inverclyde. The Stewart family were descended in the direct male line from Sir John Stewart, the illegitimate son of Robert III of Scotland, who granted him the estate of Ardgowan in Inverclyde in Renfrewshire. But brethren, there are records of Masonic lodges in Scotland laying foundation stones with full Masonic honours from the 17th century, with full parades of local dignitaries, justices, trade guilds, builders and other associations. Thus, from the remotest of times, the laying of these special stones, usually sealing in a deposit intended for future generations, has been a part of any significant building. The Freemasons in Inverclyde conducted these public ceremonies on numerous occasions for over 250 years, and many of the buildings can still be seen to this day. Of the Greenock Custom House, Foundation, the stone was laid on the 2nd of May 1817. The Watt Institution, foundation stone laid with Freemasonic honours on the 25th of August 1835. Burns Highland Mary's Monument, laid on the 25th of January 1842. The Sir Gabriel Wood Mariners' Home, foundation stone laid with Freemasonic honours on the 17th of October 1850. Sadly, brethren, the practice of laying foundation stones with Freemasonic honours all but died out in the early part of the 20th century. And the last ceremonial in our province was for the then Greenock High School in Dunlop Street on the 19th of October 1929. Freemasons are rarely nowadays called upon to perform this important civic duty. In 2003-2004, a major exhibition jointly promoted by the Provincial Grand Lodge of Renfrewshire West and Inverclyde Council was staged in the Maclean Museum in Greenock. The exhibition, which ran for 14 weeks, was attended by over 2,000 members of the public and highlighted the contribution Freemasonry had made in Inverclyde since 1728. In assembling the various exhibits, many long forgotten artifacts were discovered in the deepest recesses of local lodges. Indeed, it was known that Lodge Mount Stuart Kilwinning, number 113, that I mentioned earlier, had 3 minute books. The Grand Lodge only had the 3rd and last minute book from 1822. During a preparation and the collating of items, the 1st and 2nd minute books from 1768 were found in a cupboard in the Greenock Town Hall. These 3 minute books are now in the Grand Lodge Museum. The exhibition proved to be a huge success, brethren, and received much acclaim from the good citizens of Inverclyde, and helped dispel some of the myths about the so-called secrecy of Freemasonry. Of course, the jewel in the crown in our province is Marcus Humphrey House in Bridge of Weir. In 1986, Grand Lodge purchased the Elise Hospital building located in the Quarriers Village, a beautiful conservation area offering picturesque and peaceful surroundings. Following a programme of extensive refurbishment, the home was officially opened in 1990 as a care home for older people and renamed the Marcus Humphrey House. The home is named after James Malcolm Marcus Humphrey of Dinnet, past Grand Master, Honorary President of the Scottish Masonic Homes and the current Chairman of the Benevolence and Care Committee. Brethren, I thank you for your kind attention this evening. May you continue to enjoy your Freemasonry with honour, pride and respect for our ancient and honourable craft. Freemasonry in Inverclyde is now in its 293rd year. Our wee province is a province with a rich history, and it's a wee province with a promising future. Thank you, Right Worshipful Master, for the opportunity to address your brethren this evening. Thank you.
Brother Alexander Galbraith, past Master, past Substitute Grand Master Mason of the Grand Lodge of Scotland, can I thank you, sir, for a very enjoyable sojourn round your small province of Renfrewshire West and the municipal county of Inverclyde. I think I've been privileged to visit on numerous occasions over my 30 years in the craft, Brother Alec, and I think the last few times was in 2018 with the Widow's Sons as we were touring around the country to commemorate the armistice, but I was also representing my own province, Fife and Kinross, with a few of the other commissioned office bearers at the time at the service to Drummond at the Kirk in Greenock, and that was a very memorable day, and I must admit, fantastic views over to the other Erts and Perts of that beautiful part of the country. And what a list of achievements of firsts, Brother Galbraith, that your province has, and no doubt this evening on the Facebook we'll be able to talk about some more of them. At this time, Alec, we go to the chat room, and I'm sure we will have some questions and comments for you this evening. And we'll just quickly scroll down. Alec Craib from Inverness number 6, whose lodge you mentioned this evening. Apologies, he had to leave early for a Provincial Grand Lodge meeting up north, but thanks to you for a fascinating lecture, which you'll catch up later. Danny Morrison asks, Alec, did any brethren from the province have a significant role in the shipbuilding industry?
Yeah, quite a few. Right, Worshipful Master. Of course, it being a heavily industrial area from way back, there was many guys involved in the shipbuilding, and of course, most of the owners and directors were members of the various lodges, particularly in the Port Glasgow area, because Port Glasgow, as it was known in the early 1700s, Newark was the port for Glasgow. The river wasn't deep enough or wide enough for the ships with all their trade from the West Indies, or the sugar and tobacco and all that. They couldn't get up the river to Glasgow at that time. So Port Glasgow was the sort of main area. And all the captains of industry, as they were at that time, were members of the lodges. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Tom Davidson, a friend of yours, comments, Alexander Drummond's birth is recorded in the Edinburgh parish in Midlothian on the 18th of January, 1698. Stevie Chalmers, thanks, Alex. Excellent lecture, Alexander. A great presentation. Well done, Brother Alec. 1989 was a good year for Right Worshipful Masters. That's from Brother Slider, or more commonly known as Alistair Marshall, our past Provincial Grand Master from Stirlingshire. Ian Walk comments, interested in the reference to Old West Kirk being first built post-Reformation. I was always led to understand that my childhood church, St Columba's Parish Church, Untitled, was the first such. Its interior is square and the pulpit is in the middle, which I believe is unique. Do you have any comments on that, Alec?
That's a very similar layout to the Old West Kirk in Greenock. Yep. Yeah, because the feeling at that time was that the minister should speak to the congregation and not at the congregation. So the configuration of the church was that the pulpit was right in the middle of the church and not at one end. But no, the Old West Kirk was built in 1591, and they have the copy of the proclamation from the Scottish Parliament, which erected that first church under John Shaw, the brother of William Shaw, the Shaw Statutes. Mm-hmm. And it is generally acknowledged and proved to be the first church built in Scotland after the Reformation in 1591.
Yeah, having been in them both over the years, Alec, I think they are very similar when you go in to them both. Robert Clark comments, I visited with Caledonian Railway Lodge and did not know it was from Renfrewshire West originally. Great lecture, Brother Alexander. Well done, well done. Robert Clark also said they had a long affiliation with St Margaret's Hope, 1184, and I'm assuming that's the Caledonian Railway Lodge that he's referring to there. I think comment must also be made to your work in terms of research lodges, Alec, from one research lodge to another, because it's my understanding that you were one of the driving forces setting up the Anchor Lodge of Research 25 years ago. And well, this year you'll celebrate your Silver Jubilee, hopefully if we're back to some sort of normality. And everyone here at the Lodge Hope of Karachi wishes you and the members of the Anchor Lodge of Research all the very best for that occasion whenever you're able to commemorate and celebrate that.
Thank you, Right Worshipful Master. I know that Right Worshipful Master, Brother Nicky Stets, has been looking forward to some sort of celebration this year, but it's on hold at the moment.
And he himself has done a lot of great work over the last year with the fundraising, with a minute of your time during COVID lockdown, and that's also to be commended. As there's no other questions in the chat, the only other comment I will make, Alec, about your presentation, when you were talking about Argyll and Isles, some yellow lines came up, and I got a message from the current Provincial Grand Master of the Argyll and Isles, because he was having a challenge with his camera at the time. So I replied to him, I said, that's the ghosts of the past Provincial Grand Masters of Argyll and Isles getting a wee bit het up about their history and heritage. So I'll let Dougie and you talk about that.
I've no doubt I'll get a call from him.
So once again, Brother Alexander Galbraith, past Master Lodge Greenock St John and the Anchor Lodge of Research, thank you for coming along this evening and joining the faculty of our lockdown lecture series. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you for the invitation, Right Worshipful Master.
Thank you. Bern, just before we open the mics and allow you to say your own thank yous and congratulations to Brother Alexander Galbraith, I wish you all the very best of a bank holiday weekend for May Day coming up. And when we come back next Tuesday, it's a very special day for many brethren out there. It's Star Wars Day, Bern, and I would like to wish that May the 4th be with you all. And to commemorate that, we've got a brother coming all the way from the other side of the Atlantic, Michael Jarzabek, and he's going to talk to us about Star Wars and Freemasonry because it's the 4th of May. So, Brian, just to show that I do put some thought into the dates in our presentations, I hope you all join us. I'm not sure what we're going to be presented yet, but I'm sure there will be some enlightenment to us next week. So brethren, at this time, please feel free to unmute yourself and say thank you and good evening to Brother Galbraith. The floor is yours, brethren.
Thanks very much, Alex. Thank you very much, Brother Galbraith.
Thanks, guys.
That was excellent, Brother Galbraith. Absolutely brilliant. Well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Alec. Brilliant lecture.
Well done.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Alexander. Absolutely wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you, brother.
Most enjoyable, Alec. Well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Congratulations. Superb lecture.
Thank you.
Very informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alec. It was very, very interesting. Thank you.
Well done.
Personal lecture. Thanks very much, Brother Alec.
That was excellent. Thank you.
Well done, Alex. Congratulations from your brethren and your new neighbours in the province of Renfrewshire East. An excellent presentation this evening. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, John.
Splendid, Alexander. You must have put a lot of work into that. That was a massive undertaking. I congratulate you.
Alex. The church, St Columbus, was 1572, so probably second. The local Burn calendars wouldn't want to acknowledge that.
Sorry, what was that? I didn't pick that one up.
St Columbus Parish Church was 1572. It was built a year later. So probably second church built after the Reformation. The local Burn calendars wouldn't want to acknowledge they were second. So I was told it was first.
Scottish Parliament records make the Old West Kirk in Greenock the first church built after the Reformation, 1591, by royal proclamation at the Scottish Parliament.
You're expecting Fifers to accept that, Alex?
But Ian, that's the issue. It doesn't include the Kingdom of Fife and the cradle of Scottish Freemasonry. So your elders were probably right at that time.
It comes down to providence, Right Worshipful Master. The same as number 2.
And the debate between number 2 and Port Glasgow will probably continue this evening on Facebook, Brian.
I'm sure it will.
Thanks very much, Alex.
Thank you very much, Brother Alec. Very interesting. And as someone said before, you must have put a heck of a lot of work into that research. Thank you very much.
Brother
Thanks
Alex,
very much from Argyll, Alex. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alec. Excellent.
Thank you, Alec. That was an excellent lecture this evening. Could I ask you one small question? When Alexander Drummond went off on his continental tour and then eventually ended up in the Levant, have you found anywhere in your research what happened with his wife and 8 children?
What wife?
Did they travel, or did they end up somewhere else?
No, they remained in Scotland, Tom.
Right. Okay.
They're still in Scotland. He was married a few times, of course, as was his brother George.
Yes, yes. For money, I think.
For money.
Yes.
Brother George was married 4 times.
Yep.
And between them, they had about 15, 16 children.
Well.
It was either for money or for marzipan off the wedding cake.
Definitely for money.
Or to
Well
ensure
done,
the
Alec.
future of the
Tom
craft.
Davis, thanks very much for that information about Alexander Drummond's date of birth. I've
Yep.
searched everywhere for that, and I could find no reference to it at all.
Alistair Henderson and myself have been doing a bit of work on the early PGMs, and we actually just traced the family, because his family moved down to Edinburgh into trade before Alexander was born. So it's the same father, the same mother, and well, it was definitely recorded in Edinburgh, but sometimes it could be recorded in 2 different parishes.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Okay, Bren, I'll give you 5.
Gordon, may I ask who is the presenter next week?
Michael Yarzabek. Apologies for the pronunciation.
Okay, thank you.
Very good, Alec. I enjoyed that. It was a wee bit different from the last time I was listening to you, with one notable exception. And I thought you might mention it when Gordon mentioned about the Kingdom of Fife.
What about the Kingdom of Fife?
Well, just a notable exception from your own province. A wee comment you replied to me on your Facebook page. I'll just leave it at that. About your Premier province.
Yes, of course. But of course, the Kingdom of Fife, saying about the Premier province, that's because it says Premier on the side of their big drum.
Brother Robert Scott, past Provincial Grand Master of Linlithgowshire. I think one needs to put one's wooden spoon back in the kitchen drawer, sir. Thank you.
Good night, brethren. All the best.
Thanks, Tom.
And I'll give you 4, Bren.
Thanks again, Alec. Thanks again, Gordon. Wonderful night again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
again. Thank you very much indeed. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thanks, guys.
Good night, brethren. Stay safe.
Thank you very much. It was a thoroughly enjoyable presentation, Alec.
Your big force before you get caught.
And 3, Bren.
Another good one, Gordon. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah,
thank you.
Definitely.
Enjoyed that very much, Alec. Very enlightening tonight. Well done.
Thanks, Jim.
There's a place for the past.
Thank you very much, Brother Alex. Very interesting presentation. Is it possible to have a written copy of your paper?
Well, that paper that I'm putting into a booklet for the 300th anniversary of Freemasonry in Inverclyde, which is in 2028. So it'll be part of a proper booklet.
And
It'll be marvellous if I can get hold of a copy. It was very interesting, not only from your home province, but there are an awful lot of landmarks wrapped around that with the relationship to Scottish Freemasonry in general. It was superb.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, we incorporated into the booklet for the 300th anniversary income generation, brethren. It'll be in sale.
In other words, Alan, you'll have to wait and buy it.
I will. Yeah, that's fine.
And one, Bren, Brother Alexander Galbraith, finally on behalf, and yet again, thank you for coming along this evening to our lockdown lecture series. Brian, I'm going to finish the recording now. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you very much.